Good evening.
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Turn me up in the headphones. I need more bass in my head.
I'm still here.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I need to say a few words first off. Thank you very, very much to the Division of Housing and Food Service for providing all of the fantastic food that you guys had. There's literally nothing left. We anticipated about 100 people, and we ended up having to put a huge amount of chairs extra. So thank you guys very much for providing the food. And two other folks that I really want to say thank you to are the organizations Consult Your Community. Thank you guys very much for being here and helping me partner with this. Dylan in the back over there in the suit looks like a stud. And thank you everybody that's here from Delta Sigma Pi for the support and for helping with the logistics of the event. Next, I just kind of want to introduce the three gentlemen sitting to my left. First, I'll start with Professor Bill Peterson. I took his class, Marketing 337, which is a Principles of Marketing course in my sophomore year. And shortly after I took his class, he hired me, and we've done a couple of different jobs with a couple of different companies. One that he co-owned and one that he's now the Vice President of Strategy at. He's been a tremendous influence on my college, my professional, and my personal career. And I don't know where I'd be without him. And I'm really ecstatic that a lot of you guys get to hear about some of the things that he's done in his career and some of his opinions on the topic that we're going to be doing tonight. And second, I want to introduce Dr. Luke Winslow. He is my faculty mentor in San Jacinto South. Going to be leaving at the end of this semester, and he's going to be moving to San Diego State. And so the last portion of leaving Texas for the future is actually because of Dr. Winslow. He's done a ton of work with MBAs. He travels a ton, does his own independent consulting, and I think he's going to have a lot to contribute to tonight as well. And the last gentleman to my left is someone who I recently met and is just a phenomenal individual. It's hard to say that Dr. John Daly needs any type of introduction, because when I first walked into Einstein's a couple of weeks ago, I was literally shaking. I never met this guy. Just said, hey, would you mind meeting up with me? Dr. Winslow said, you'd be great for this. And I looked up his bio. He's written 6 books, and he's won every undergraduate teaching award that the University of Texas offers. And I was just like, how do I say hi to this guy? Like, I was terrified. He was so welcoming. He said, I would love to participate. He hadn't met Professor Peterson until tonight, but he's met Dr. Winslow, and they've had a great relationship over their time here in Texas. And so with that, I guess the first part, we're going to give each of these gentlemen just an opportunity to say a little bit about their definition of offboarding and what that means. Hopefully you guys haven't heard of that, and if you have, maybe you might hear a different definition tonight.
First of all, how many of you are graduating next month? This year, show of hands? Just a few of you? Well, hopefully the rest of you will be graduating in another year or two, right? When I think about offboarding, clearly anytime you leave the university for the summer, maybe to go to an internship or to a job, or when you leave the university permanently, like Dr. Winslow will be, unfortunately, there's a lot of changes, but I'd like to speak primarily about offboarding in terms of graduating, because that's probably the biggest change. The biggest type of offboarding you'll experience. I think about that a lot because really my passion for teaching comes from trying to get students excited about their careers and get them prepared for that. Like Garrett said, I'm not a full-time professor. I don't have a PhD. I have a real job outside the university. That did not come out right. I have a full-time job outside the university. I just love to teach. And also I think about this offboarding and graduation a lot because my daughter graduated from college with a marketing degree 2 years ago. My son goes to a university over in College Station, and he'll be graduating here very soon. So I think a lot about the kind of advice I give to them. And I think what comes to mind there with offboarding is that college is great for so many reasons. You probably enjoy a lot of the freedoms that you experience versus what you had in high school, for example. Away from home, away from your parents in many cases, You have a chance to make a lot of different decisions for yourself, maybe for the first time. But I gotta tell you, compared to the change you're getting ready to experience as you leave the university, you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, the guardrails are about ready to come off. Right now, in college, even though you have many freedoms, you still are told when to register, and what classes to take, and what format your resume should be in. You have a lot of resources, like the gentleman on the stage here, that really are here to teach you, but also to help you. There's a lot of people that want to help when you're a college student. That all comes to an end when you walk across the stage and get your degree. So when I think about offboarding, it's primarily about that huge change that occurs, maybe even bigger from high school to college, is the change from college to when you're on your own, have to make all your own decisions. Nobody's looking out for you except yourself. And that change, as you just determine what you're going to be for the rest of your career, is a big change that we can talk more about as the evening goes on.
Let me start with a story that can kind of illustrate.
Don't take his class.
My definition of offboarding. A familiar cultural touchstone is the idea of a midlife crisis. And so I had a family friend when I was younger. He turned 50, and he left his wife, and he bought a new red Corvette and a $2,000 leather jacket, and got an earring. 50-year-old man, gray, balding, kind of overweight, earring, leather jacket. He was sweet, or at least he thought he was. And people would ask him, "What's going on? I mean, what's going on with your life? Not just the earring, but you left your family. What's going on?" And his response was that midlife crisis. Something we've all heard before, but what I think is interesting about that is that if you look at the empirical research, the idea of a midlife crisis, at least according to Abe Arcott, who's a psychology professor at the University of Hawaii, a midlife crisis is primarily a media-created fiction. There's very little empirical research to back up this idea that you turn 40 or 50 and your life feels incomplete, so you just change everything. The research actually says that real crisis, if you want to call it crisis, is more like a quarter-life crisis. And it happens between 22 and 25. That's where all this idea of where am I going, what am I doing with my life, that's when it's more likely to hit you. And you can imagine why. And Professor Peterson just talked about that. You are in a wonderful community right now. And most of you will be in it for another few years. But you can imagine, if you can forecast a little bit, what is it going to be like when you graduate, when the guardrails come down, and you get that first job, and you may have to move out of Austin, Texas, believe it or not, and you might have to go to Detroit or Pittsburgh or Cleveland, and you may have to work with people that are primarily older than you, who have different interests. You may get a job at Accenture, and Accenture, they don't have a hand sign, and they don't have a fight song, and they don't have a cow and a team color. Fraternities and sororities, it's a different community. And it's great for a lot of reasons, but one of the things that I think hits people and contributes to that quarter-life crisis is just the massive adjustment from a rich, vibrant, textured community, like y'all get here, into that working world. And so my definition of offboarding, it sounds really pessimistic, and that's intentional because I want to be realistic as well, is that it's a massive life changes that you don't want to go in unprepared. And this is something we can kind of talk about later, but the idea is if you know you're going to leave UT, which y'all are, I hope, someday, if you know that's going to happen, we can begin to prepare for it in such a way that that quarter-life crisis is not something that debilitates you. It's something that you can actually use as kind of a turning point in your life in a positive way.
I can't say more than that. Let me just give you a couple quick thoughts. Who's graduating this year? Let's imagine you go back to a time machine. You find a time machine someplace. You hop in that time machine, hit a button, okay? A whole bunch of things happen, okay? And you arrive in ancient Greece, or you arrive in Florence in 1500. The question I'd ask you to think about as you graduate is, would I be the Aristotle or the Da Vinci of that time? It seems to me what college does best is teach you to keep learning and to know more than previous generations have. So I think your test is, would you be the smartest person in the world if you came back 1,500 years or 500 years? And hopefully you'll say yes. Hopefully that's one thing UT's done, is made you that smart. But at the same time, a lot of people, most people, live off their investment they made in college for the rest of their lives. And the people I know who've been very successful after they graduate keep learning. They keep putting investments in, as opposed to simply saying, I'm done. Second observation, who's not graduating this year? Have fun this summer. Enjoy it. But also do something really weird. Do something crazy, all right? I always tell people, when you graduate from college, go to a big city that kind of scares you. Don't study abroad in Madrid with tens of thousands of other US students. Go to some country you've never even heard of before and do study abroad there and challenge yourself in that environment. Because you don't care. You can live in hostels. You can live on floors. You live in dorms right now, right? When you get to be some of our age, we want Hyatts instead. All right? So you really got to kind of explore at this point. And I'd urge you in the summertime, if you can, to do something that challenges you in some ways. Do something that becomes memorable. Do something that you probably will never do when you're 40 years old. Do it now, because it's the only chance in some ways. So I think it's actually an exciting time. For the graduates, ask yourself, have I graduated? Do I know enough? And how can I keep learning stuff? For those not graduating, do something just incredible. Do something that your parents would be a little bit scared about. That's a good thing to do, by the way. Everyone parents happy when you do your internship, for example, in Dallas. That sounds really good. Doing an internship in, I don't know, Malawi would be much more exciting for many of you. Your parents won't even find it on a map initially. That's what you want. And have that experience. So my piece of advice is go crazy, all right? Have fun this summer.
So that's a perfect segue into what the format of this is going to be. I've got a few questions here lined out. The first are going to be a little bit about general philosophy. The next set are going to be about kind of in their own experience. And the final part is I'm going into strategy consulting in the fall. And so there's a few questions about consulting in there. So that's a perfect segue again. And you kind of hit it with what your best advice would be for someone leaving Texas just for this summer. So this particular question is, if I'm a returning student in the fall, what's kind of your best advice for something I should do this summer?
Sure, well, this is not nearly as interesting as what you just talked about, doing something weird. But I worked at Dell for a long time. I worked at other technology companies in Austin and elsewhere. I've heard a lot of people like you. And I can tell you that as you come out of University of Texas, all your resumes look exactly the same. You had the same classes. You had hopefully a 3-point-something GPA. You were in a couple of clubs in school. The university even makes you put it in the same exact format, which I don't know really works in your best interest, but that's what you're asked to do. The tiebreaker, the thing that determines if I want to hire somebody or not, I proffer if any hiring manager wants to hire somebody or not, you get out of school, is what did you do during the summer in the way of an internship? Now maybe it could be in Malawi or somewhere like that, but what you do during the summer says a lot about you. First of all, it says what experiences that you have and what could you come into my organization and do. But even more importantly, it tells something about you, about your determination and your assertiveness to go out there and do the hard thing and land that cool job at a consulting firm or at a small company. And it gives you, no matter what question you get in an interview, the right internship will give you the opportunity to go back to a specific situation that you had and talk about how you handled that particular problem or how you addressed that opportunity. So I'm all for having fun, certainly, but I do think that what you do during the summer has more to say about your future career than what you learn here during the semester. Because what you learn here during the semester, very important, you got to know it, but everybody, all 7,000 McCollum students are getting that same experience. I really think what differentiates you is what you do during the summer on your own when you have the flexibility to go seek out your own opportunities, and I think that speaks to the opportunity for a really good internship. Not very exciting, I know, but I think that's what works.
I'd encourage y'all to, as Peterson said, the more and more we find out about what makes people successful, it's not really intelligence, it's grit and gumption, and there's a few different words for it. But there's this idea that people that are tenacious, that can respond to failure, are oftentimes the one that just simply last. And so it fits a little bit with the advice that you heard, is you'll have some options to safe things where you'll be relatively successful or at least comfortable. And I'd encourage you to seek out an opportunity where you can fail and respond to that failure. I don't know what form that would take. That'd be unique to you. Give me an example. Let me give you an example. If I give you a math problem, like if I say, what's 1,100 times 20? Who can answer that right now? What is it? No? 2,200. Matt got it right there. All right, now the question is, why did Matt get it and Caitlin and Mariah did it? Why didn't you get it, Callie? All right, so what happens is when we fail, this is just a poor example, but it fits. When we fail, we have to rationalize why we failed. So even something as simple as what's 1,100 times 20, y'all failed except for him. Think about why you failed, or at least the story that you told yourself about why you failed. Now, if that was me and I was in the audience, I would have said this: I'm not a math person. I'm just not good at math. The problem is, if you develop a response to failure that is about your fixed traits, you'll often bump up against the ceiling where your physical, intellectual, social, emotional limitations are met. And if you have a fixed attitude towards your own ability, you can't get any better. You can't learn from that. So the idea is, I'd encourage you to put yourself in a situation where you run into problems, where you run into your ceiling, and think about how you can respond to that failure in a way that develops an incremental mindset. That you're nothing yet, but you will be something great if you work hard.
I'll just add one more thing. Do something that matters. I spent a lot of time with some very successful companies, and everyone's vanilla. Everyone's done everything the same. They've done great internships. They've done great grades. So if everyone's good at that stuff, it doesn't matter. So I do a lot of work on Wall Street, for example. Everyone there's pre-screened for brilliance. Everyone is brilliant at math. Everyone is really good at school. They've all done school wonderfully their entire lives. So it doesn't matter. If everyone's brilliant quantitatively, it doesn't matter anymore. You've got to do something that matters to you, that makes you want to get up in the morning and stay up late at night. And you've got to do something distinctive from other people. I don't disagree at all that a good internship is really important for getting a job. But if you're just doing a job, in my mind, it doesn't distinguish you in any way, matter of form. What you need to do is do something that people say, wow, that's really neat. That's amazing what you did. How did you ever do that? You need to be able to collect stories. That's my look, that you want to come up with some great stories. When somebody says, tell me about your internship, I don't care what it is, Dell, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, BlackRock. What happened there? What happened there? Oh, I just came in early and stayed late. I ignored their vacation policy. Big deal. You got to come up with something distinctive that creates a great story that you can tell people later on. I actually believe in social entrepreneurship a lot, in summer times too, assuming you can afford it. Go someplace where you can actually change some people's lives for a short period of time. You'll learn more about small business and big business if you watch somebody make money in a poor country than in a rich country. Politics, who wants to go to politics? Don't work in a national election. I've worked in any election category, you know. The most important elections are your local community elections. Because you can actually count whether or not somebody's going to get elected based upon what you did. You're not going to matter in a national election. But you'll learn real politics in a city council election, a mayor election, and you actually can have some impact. You can actually change something in some way, matter of form. And that's completely different than the notion of always going to the best status internship, because if everyone has the best status internship, it doesn't matter. So you got to find something that distinguishes you and something that gives you good stories in it. That's my philosophy.
So I remember one of the best things that I heard when I was starting off at Kinzer was, you need to come in and you need to be the smartest person on a topic that no one else in the company knows about. And I was hoping that that would be a good transition into the next question. What would be some of the advice for a graduating senior, so somebody in my position? We've talked about somebody who's going to be coming back, and it sounds like it doesn't really matter what your experience is. You need to do something, and you'd like to develop a story and come back with some type of competitive advantage for that returning student. So what about for someone who's going to be leaving Texas as a graduating senior?
Sure, yeah, I think it comes down to your story. Like we've heard so much. Not your GPA, not your social organization, can you tell your story? And this is advice I get often about how to nail a job interviews. You have to line up the qualifications that they're seeking with your story. So they have a gap, that's why they're interviewing you. You have to make a way that you can fill it in a unique way. Now, everyone will say they're analytical, everyone can say that they worked on this group project in BA 324 and they learned how to handle a difficult group member. They'll hear that a lot. The question is, what story can you tell that's compelling, vivid, and cogent that convinces that person that you have the unique qualifications to fill that gap and make it fit.
Work harder than anyone else. Who's done an internship already? You done an internship already? Understand, you go to a very prestigious organization. Everyone there comes from really fancy schools. You say, I can never compete. I can have my daughter, for example, older daughter went to the White House to work as an internship. And she calls me up there when she's in college and says, there's somebody from Harvard, there's somebody from the University of Oxford University, somebody from Yale, there's Princeton, and there's me from the University of Arizona. How can I compete? And my only piece of advice was just work harder. Show up earlier, stay later, and slowly but surely people will notice who's doing that sort of thing. So it's a lot of those basic just P's and Q's, write your thank you notes on a regular basis, okay? Be positive when you're in that environment. No one likes an Eeyore, all right? You know, help people out. When things are slow, help people out. If you got nothing else to do, reorganize the supply closet, all right? Nothing bad about that. Don't dismiss your effort, for example. When somebody says thank you, don't say no problem. That's stupid. It probably was a problem. All right? So say you're welcome. All right? Say you're welcome. Make sure people see you. Make sure people know you're there without being annoying. All right? Be joyful. All right? Find out what distinguishes you, as Luke said. What distinguishes you in a positive way, as well as what's scarce. And you want both things. You want something that's very valuable as well as very scarce. Very valuable is nice. All of us speak English here. Who cares? All right? Who speaks an odd language, unusual language for this part of the world? Who speaks Kazakh? Can you speak Kazakh here? If you spoke Kazakh as well as English and had an engineering or business background, I would tell you go to Milan, Italy, go to Houston, Texas, go to San Francisco, California. Only in those 3 cities in the world does Kazakh matter outside of Astana and Almaty. And you know why? Energy. Why? Some of the biggest finds in oil in the last 50 years are in Kazakhstan, mostly Western Kazakhstan. But Chevron's biggest investments there. ExxonMobil was the lead partner there, okay? Eni was the first partner there, Italian oil company Milan. Understand, Kazakh doesn't matter in Austin, Texas. It simply does not matter. It's scarce but not valuable. English is valuable and not scarce.
But for those social media is something that comes to mind. I teach marketing classes, and I guarantee you, you know more about social media and the power of it and how to use it than 99% of the companies that you might be joining after school. So I encourage you to not just do what your boss tells you to do. You need to do that, of course. But, you know, like Garrett did. Garrett, I'll close your ears for a second. Probably, the best, or at least the most promising student I've had. When he came to Kenter, he did what I asked him to, but he made a point to meet somebody new every day. By the time the month or so had passed, he met everybody at that company. He volunteered for everything. He would, and on occasion, would challenge things. Not in a disrespectful way, because that's a problem. But if you're professional and respectful, and especially if you have data to back it up, then that's a very appropriate thing for you to do. So I implore you not to assume that you are your least experienced and least capable person in the room when you go to work at your company. Realize that you have a lot of new experiences and perspectives. And if you take advantage of those things, volunteer, ask questions, shadow people, not only do you make a bigger contribution, have a whole lot of fun, but you say more about yourself and your capabilities for the future than anything your resume could ever communicate.
Awesome. So the last part of this question is for Dr. Daly and Professor Peterson. And it's kind of giving some advice to Dr. Winslow. What would you say to him in his last program here at UT? He's got, so you know, you should be at my graduation a month from tomorrow, and then you're free to go. What's your advice for somebody who might be moving on to the next step in their professional career?
Publish well and frequently. The point of academics is research as well as teaching. And where he's going wants both, they want done well. He's a brilliant teacher. How many of you had him? How many agree now? He's a brilliant teacher, okay? So he's got that down. I would tell him, publish good substantive research and get known for your research. So 5 years from now, they don't say research on this, they say Winslow stuff. That's how you made it an academic. Creating a brand name for your scholarship is what I would tell him to do. Because he's already a great teacher.
Probably the only area that I'm ahead of Dr. Winslow is in age. Not much I can add, but I would like to mention one thing, that I'm 52 years old. And as I get older, I realize that the advice that my grandmother gave me on my wedding day was probably the best advice I ever got. I was 22 years old. My grandmother, probably the wisest person I ever knew, said on my wedding day, just be happy. That's all you get out of life. And that's kind of a throwaway line at the time. I said, yeah, right, Granny, we're going on a honeymoon, thank you. But as I get older, I realize that, as you're a young person in your career, a lot of your success and a lot of your milestones and motivation is titles or salary or the number of papers published. I understand why that's important. But as you get older and you've accomplished many of those things, you start to realize that maybe those were appropriate goals for the younger part of your career. And as you get up to my advanced age, I think you're going to find there's other things. I don't know what they would be for you. It might have to do with giving something back and relationships and who knows what it might be. But don't be surprised one day when you realize that the things that have motivated you all your life and continue to right now, that you're so good at, aren't as important at some point. A different set of things will be, and that's okay. And it's extremely satisfying and a source of a lot of happiness to understand that and to shift your priorities and to go after those.
Thank you guys for giving that advice. Has anybody seen Dr. Winslow's last lecture? A few people. So it's on YouTube. Here's a plug for that, Dr. Winslow. Y'all should go watch it. It's fantastic. Thank you to Olivia for filming this actually. That his last lecture is online in kind of a one part that's like 13 minutes and the second part's around 11 minutes.
And if you like that, there you can type in Luke dunking, and there's another set of clips dunking basketball. With some nice hardcore rap music in the background. Check that out. Oh yeah.
I bring that up because he said, be happy. And the introduction, or the introductory line to your last lecture, do you remember it?
Yeah.
Does anybody know it? No. Does anybody know it? Nobody? Anybody? Get all you want, right?
Yeah.
Get all you want and be happy. And I think those go very, very well hand in hand. So, being happy, this goes into the next one. It's a little bit more lighthearted of a question. We'll start with Dr. Winslow since you, thankfully, were patient for that one. What has been your favorite memory on the 40 acres?
My wife and I have some lovely memories on the 40 acres, so I would start there. I just got married in July. My wife, Addie, is here.
Oh, good.
I'll give you one that didn't happen on 40 acres, but it fits. I went to the Rose Bowl in 2005 when Texas beat USC. I say, won the game. And I was sitting near the UT section where all the fans that had come out from Texas to Pasadena were watching the game. And I look over, and there are these grown men and women watching these young men celebrate on the field after they won a national championship. And these grown men and women are crying. Tears of joy. And I thought, this is my school. I'm all about it. So, I don't know, there's a lot. So I've been here for 9 years, 4 as a graduate student, and now 5 as a faculty member. I think instead of one real defining moment, I think what I'll take away when I look back on my time here is just the quality of the undergraduate student, and more specifically that the undergraduate students care, that what they're doing at UT matters. And that y'all are familiar with that because that's the school you go to and that's what everyone does, but it's not that common. And so to be able to teach, as with your known students that actually care, makes our job, we're slipping into cliches here, I hate that. It makes it feel like it matters. It makes it feel like you're actually having an impact, not just going to a job.
Well, my favorite memory has to be I met my wife here. So I count that as the best memory I've had so far. It's my best memory when I leave here. All right. So I can tell you 1,000 cliche things about remembering students. I remember a bunch of them. I remember pranks. I remember fun moments on campus. But I think the thing I remember most is me and my wife. And I'm very grateful for that. So that's my favorite memory.
2 for 2, Bill.
You know, it's actually 3 for 3 because I met my wife in a freshman English class in 1980, in the spring semester 1980, here on the University of Texas campus. So, yeah, so most of my, when I think back on my time here, and it's funny, just walking around campus today, it's deja vu. I remember being here when I was a student. Most of my memories are from being a student. As an instructor, I've been teaching now 6 or 7 years. I get a big kick out of a practicum class that I teach where students form teams and do real work. They're actually management consultants for a company here in town. Amy's Ice Cream is one this semester and a whole bunch of them. But at the end of the semester, when the students present and the client is genuinely impressed, and 2 or 3 months later, you see that marketing strategy, whatever it was, actually being implemented by the company they did the work for. And the students realize, hey, this crap really works. This stuff really works. It really has a lot of appeal. And it's fun for me to see the light bulb go off. It's a nice capstone for business education.
Awesome. So I didn't plan that at all, but 3 for 3. Wow. So the next question is on a similar note about things here in college. What are a few things that you wish you would have taken advantage of when you were in college?
My biggest mistake is I graduated in 3 years rather than 4. And I still have no idea why I did that. So I wish I'd taken more advantage of my senior year to enjoy things. I also wish I'd taken more classes that were totally irrelevant to my majors. I find the older I get, the more important things are that I ought to know that I don't know. And I'm very focused in school, and I did get a lot of depth of what I was interested in at that point. But I think I missed out on some really great classes about things that didn't matter now that matter. You know, I do this research about very successful people. I ask them what their secrets are. And invariably what these guys done who made it, whether it be business, government, whatever, they always say, I wish I had known certain things. And I have to depend upon other people to do it for me. My favorite story is a number of years ago, I met with this executive. He said, what's your major? I'm accounting major, okay? I got an MBA, very prestigious school. He says, I spend my life now dealing with art and music at my level. I said, art and music, what do you mean? He says, everyone comes for money for me. They want me to pay for things. They want me to fund a symphony hall. They want me to fund an art show, okay? I have no idea what I'm doing in this point. And I ought to know that. And I guess what I'm saying is make sure you get what we used to call liberal arts education here as well. Learn some things, read Shakespeare. You'd be surprised how that helps the rest of your life. Take art, take music, do stuff that has no immediate relevance, because my experience has been those things that are not relevant now surprisingly become relevant later on. Because most of the knowledge you get technically will be irrelevant 30 years from now, even 20 years from now. But some things last, so try to take at least a few courses of those things that will last through your lifetime. That would be my piece of advice.
That's good advice, especially for a lot of y'all are business students, so that's particularly important. McCombs is great. The main critique of McCombs is that we are training you to go out and make money for Accenture and ExxonMobil, as if that's the purpose of your education, which of course it's not. Getting a good job is important, but that's not why you're here. So to piggyback on that, I would say there's a window between 18 and 22 where you become who you are, right? Your identity is in many ways formed in that window. So develop technical skills that can allow you to go out and pay the bills, get a job, but at the same time develop a set of social and emotional skills that allow you to go out and live a life that is much richer and much more full and much more abundant than just working Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, so you can have fun on weekends until you can get to the point where you can retire. Because there's really only one major thing that happens after you retire. And no.
Can't add much to that other than to say it's funny, as you get older, I think most successful people have a real passion for learning. You know, new languages or new cultures, or learn how to learn calculus even. My dad's 80 years old and is studying math right now. But most people have this passion for learning as they get older. Unfortunately, the time in your life when you have the best opportunity to learn things and experience things is now for you, when you may not have that passion yet. And I wish I could just grab all of you and just shake you and say, take advantage of what's here. Take advantage of those experiences and those classes. The fact that you're here spending your evening voluntarily here at this event says a lot about you in particular, which is great. I encourage you to keep doing that and do something to encourage your classmates, because too many people just kind of stumble through and do what they have to pass their classes, and they don't get the full range of experiences that are here. And I promise you that 20 years from now they'll be thinking, why didn't I take advantage of that?
Thank you guys. So I'm going to transition into a few consulting questions, and then right about 8:15 we'll take questions from the audience. So if you guys have any questions, now would be a good time to think about some, maybe the stories that we've heard, or maybe just personal questions that you guys might want to ask. So the first one is going to be, how would you transition from UT Austin to solving real world problems? I think this speaks a little bit to the class that you teach. How would you go about doing that?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. Nothing great ever is done by one person. I mean, maybe there's a few examples to contradict that. But generally, in your life, to do the really great things and you have the most satisfaction, it's going to be involving other people. Consulting projects are certainly that way. I ran my own consulting practice for almost a decade. It always involves other people. You're involving your client, or you're involving other researchers, or you're involving investors, perhaps. And so to be able to get them all on board, to see your vision, to share it, to help you, to pull them over at the same time with you, it involves a lot of clarity of thought and some real strong communication. So I'm kind of talking more nuts and bolts tonight than you two guys are. You have some great, more macro level comments, which I'm sure you'll share in a minute. But as I think about consulting and where I've been successful and where I've seen success, is people that can take a complex situation and simplify it. Oftentimes with some type of diagram or framework on one piece of paper, such that they can show it to the client and say, here's what we're going to do, such that they can show it to this other person who needs to collaborate and say, I need you to do this part down here. With the knowledge that all those parts get done, they snap together and they make this great thing happen. Great leaders, great consultants are almost always great simplifiers. You got to be able to take this probably very complicated situation, simplify it in a way that everybody you need to interact with to help you make this successful can understand it, can understand what part you need them to do. And if everybody does that, if you're successful, all those pieces snap together and voila, something great happens.
Be really smart and be kind to people, and that's the best piece of advice about consulting that I have. And things usually turn out all right.
Sounds like Matthew McConaughey, doesn't it? He sounds like
All right.
just trying to think about this all night long. What did he sound like? I recognize the voice. I would say consulting, there's a couple of things. I've worked with a lot of consulting firms in my life. One is trust your engagement manager. They know a lot more than you do. When you get to Accenture, you're stupid, and accept that. Embrace it, in fact, and learn from them and know what happens. Number two, you're not going to be a big shot right away. Your opinion probably doesn't matter initially at Accenture. You're hired to do work every day, do analyses every day. Do a damn good job of that stuff. Check your numbers twice. Always be prepared to answer a question well. When you start with consulting, it's really grunt work for a period of time. And the people I see who do poorly think they're better than everyone else on the team, and that's really dumb, because those guys are where they're at because they've been very, very good. Thirdly, you won't be able to do this in the first few years, but choose your clients. Insofar as you want a consulting to try to work with a variety of different industries if you can, as opposed to one industry. So you get a sense of what each industry offers. Work for a firm, Accenture does do this. I like McKinsey better. You have an up or out environment. You get promoted and you have to leave. Nothing wrong with leaving, because you do find a good job. When you work for a name firm, your brand name gives you 5 minutes of credibility when you walk in the room for the rest of your life. So you want to get lots of different experience with different kinds of clients. I would try to get an international deal at some point even. But also be interested in businesses that you can't buy. Why would anyone be interested in this business? I've been lucky enough to work with some companies where it's just, I could never imagine making that business until I get to know it. And I learn really interesting things. I'm astounded they actually do that. And so when you go, everyone says you want to work with these big companies with these big clients, that's fine. But sometimes that small client gives you more control, more say early on. You can have a bigger impact. Go to projects that are not successful already. Everything works in waves in life, in my experience. If you're at the top of the wave, only one is going to happen. It crests, you go down. You want to be that person who rides the wave up by taking a difficult project that people think could not succeed and turn it around. So I have a student right a couple of years ago out of Daly. You know what he did? He was Iraqi by background, U.S. raised in Dallas, Texas, okay? He's as Dallas as anyone you know, but his parents were both Iraqi. He got a job with a European consulting firm in Baghdad. And that's not a typical consulting deal, right? But he was there for 2 years. Now he's working with the United Nations, okay, in New York, doing amazing things for someone who's 25, 26 years old. It wasn't Accenture in New York or Houston. He was going someplace that was really different. And he got so much more experience because he really changed what happened there. And it was working every day harder than anyone else, but also choosing the right client to work with over a period of time. My advice.
So what do you think that we as students at UT Austin, what's something unique that we can bring to the table because we come from this university?
I would tell you network. If you plan to stay in Texas, UT is a great place. But there's a network almost ever with UT, and you offer that network in some ways. That's one thing you offer. Also, there's a kind of maddening affability about Texans. They're always upbeat and positive. And I think you can offer that as well. It's this kind of a weird thing. Who grew up not in Texas? Who grew up in the Northeast? Anyone grew up in the Northeast? Everyone's pissed at them. Everyone's pissed. And you be in Boston. I mean, you go to California, everything's in a movie every day, all right? Texans have this wonderful affability, and it's never misunderstand the value of that. People like nice people, and Texans are generally nice people. We underestimate how valuable that is in other parts of the world. We also live in a very multicultural environment in Texas, probably more than some states. So you may have more experience working in that environment too that will serve you incredibly well as that goes on.
Amy Chu wrote a book recently called The Triple Package, which I've referenced a few times in my classes. And in it, she has this line that I love that fits well with what Gary just asked. She says that successful groups of people, and she focuses on Jews, Nigerians, Asians, and LDS, Mormons in the U.S. are disproportionately successful compared to other groups. This is her argument. And she says part of it is because they have this balance between grit and chip. So grit is that gumption, that tenacity, work really hard. And the chip is the chip on the shoulder. This sense of insecurity, but also a sense of brashness that you're going to show something. And I love that because it really exemplifies this larger Texas ethos, and more specifically a UT ethos, that we are proud of our school. And we are proud that we're graduates of it, and we're going to show you what type of people we are. But at the same time, we can be motivated by a sense of we're not quite there yet. So there's this balance between being confident but not being overly arrogant. And I think that's what, and again, in more of a philosophical way, I think that's kind of the ethos that you have accepted by coming here and hoping will be drilled into you by the time you graduate.
Yeah, I would like to mention that
Be someone in the room who knows something that like other people don't know. And I was just kind of like, but I thought that kind of contrasted just a little bit with what you said about like these very successful people. They tend to know kind of everything. So what's the balance between being a jack of all trades or someone who's like a master at one thing? Which would you recommend being as you go out of college?
Both. No, I think you gotta do both. You gotta have to, especially what you want to do in college, I think, is learn how to learn. I don't care what your major is, learning how to learn will hopefully teach you. And that means you can get deep over and over again in your life. But I also think you have to have an incredible curiosity about things that you don't know a lot about. One thing I've noticed about very successful people is they know surprising details. You say, how the hell do you even know that? That builds your credibility every day. And you don't have to know a lot of details, you gotta know a few. Does that make sense? And everyone goes, that's impressive. She knows that sort of thing. So I don't know how much depth. I think you need to learn how to be deep at one point, more than once in your life. I think expertise is deeply valued. But it's kind of one of those weird pyramids. When you start off, you have to be deep and narrow. But as you get more mature, as you get more experience, you gotta get broader and regrettably probably less narrow. Most execs I run into who are very successful don't know much of what people are doing in their large companies. They know what they're doing. Leaders create problems that other people solve. They ask questions. No, that's their way to define the problem. What do I mean? In a big company, are you a market share company or a margin company? You can't be both simultaneously. One CEO comes and says, we're going to be a market share company. Our goal is to gain customers. Next one says, our goal is to make we get profit from those customers. So you go back and forth. They don't actually know how to sell something, for example, but they do know what they need to get done, which is expand the customer base, make more profit, something like that. They set the agenda as opposed to actually doing the agenda. I like to say managers do work, executives get work done. And I think by the time you move to a leadership role, that breadth matters even more than depth. But you've got to always be willing to go back and learn depth again. And the best thing you get out of the University of Texas, I hope, is the ability to learn something well, so it can serve you over a period of time, and then learn again. Topic matters. To me, a topic doesn't matter. I find extraordinary number of backgrounds for people who've been very successful, and a huge number of non-business school backgrounds, which is interesting. But what they did learn is they learned how to learn very well. So I think you need both. I think you need both. And I'm serious. You've got to be curious enough about things you don't know, and you've got to know something well at the same time. It's just that weird. It's a weird combination. People learn to juggle those things sometimes.
When I was a first-year grad student here, I asked that pretty much that same question to the dean of the College of Communication, and his response was, "You have to be great at everything." So I go, "Thanks." So I like the idea. It's balanced, but do it all really, really well.
that word curiosity is a great trait. When you start in your career, nobody expects you to know everything, and you won't. Your employer doesn't expect you to. But I tell you, it is very impressive in a job interview when you can demonstrate that, yeah, you don't know everything, but if you can ask the insightful questions, you demonstrate that you have this capacity and this drive to learn what you don't know. It becomes clear to that person you're talking with that you have the ability to quickly learn what you need to know to be successful at that company. So, we haven't talked about interviews, but if we did, I would really encourage you to think carefully about that trait and how you can demonstrate that in an interview, because that will help overcome any skill gaps you have, help you become an expert when you need to become an expert. If you have this innate curiosity and a knack for asking good questions, you can get there.
One more suggestion, read The Economist. Who's read The Economist before the magazine? You can learn enough about lots of topics every week if you read it. Does that make any sense to you? You don't get depth, but you get details. My piece of advice, read The Economist.
Sure.
Dr. Winslow, as you move on, what do you feel insecure about now that you're moving to a new school? What makes you nervous about the transition?
I'm worried that my students are going to show up 10 minutes late to every class in board shorts and flip-flops. Call me Luke and wear sunglasses and just chill.
That's really what happened.
No, like I said, I mean, I'm worried that I'm taking for granted the quality of the student that I have now, and not to gas y'all up or anything, but that's going to be a difference that I'm trying to prepare myself for. Also, it's a new position in terms of the expectations as far as mentoring graduate students and advising theses, and the research expectations are a bit different. So, really, this is me needing to learn how to transition into a new role, which is something I'm looking at now. Good question, thank you.
Andrew.
So this is kind of a more personal question, but like I'm kind of interested because I think you guys will have different answers for this. How do you feel about relationships in your early 20s? Is it more of a time to spend exploring yourself and growing in that manner, or I don't know, like what are your thoughts across the board?
I have actually a strong opinion about that. And I'll just, you asked to answer personally, so I will. When I got married, I got married 6 days out of graduate school when I was 22 years old. I didn't have a lot of life experience, and I didn't have the confidence in the relationship that I had formed to know that it would survive through any ups and downs. And as a result, I got divorced when I was in my 30s, I guess it was. Maybe, yeah, late 30s, I guess it was. Because I didn't have enough confidence that what I had was really good. I got divorced since then. We've kind of reconciled, actually, because I realized now, after a few of the relationships in between, that was the right thing for me to do. If I could do it again, and if I could give you some advice, it would be to have relationships, to learn what's important to you, learn what you need out of a relationship, try different things, sow all your wild oats, if you will, so that when you do have a relationship, you will have the confidence that you evaluated different types of relationships, different types of people, and when you find the right person, you'll know it. So I think you should have relationships. Certainly don't stay away from relationships in an effort to further your business career. That's a lousy reason to rob yourself of that joy from your life.
There's a great book by Meg Jay, who's a psychologist at Carolina Chapel Hill. You read it, man. Good. If you haven't, it's called The Defining Decade, and she answers that question really well. The book is about people in their 20s who graduate and just kind of hang out for a few years and work at Starbucks and sleep around, and all of a sudden they wake up and they're 35 and they've developed no human capital at all in the broad sense of the word. Not a problem with a lot of UT students, but you can imagine how we are at a point with our society where the 20s in many ways is just kind of a lost time for a lot of people. And so I think take your question and apply it in other areas as well, intellectually, socially, emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. Don't waste any time, but at the same time, work really hard to find out your own identity. And again, we get into cliche, but if you love yourself, then it's much more easier to love someone else. So finding that identity is really important. And for the empirical research on your question.
The research says have relationships, but don't get married to your late 20s. The data is compelling. You're far more likely to get divorced if you get married early on. You want relationships, you want to try them out, but wait a little bit longer than you think, all right? Men, it's about 29, almost 30 now. Women, it's about 27, 28, even older. It depends upon your career, too. The more professional your career is, the longer you wait, interesting enough. And the reason seems to be this, to some extent. There are a lot of explanations why it works better. People change. You change more the younger you are. And couples often say, this is going to be wonderful, we'll change together. But they don't. And then they have all this friction every day and all this drama every day. And when you get a little bit older, you get more experiences, you get more wisdom. I'm not saying don't do relationships, but I will tell you the data is relatively clear. Wait a little bit longer than you think to get married. That's what the data tells us. It used to be my generation, your generation, we got married right out of college. And this massive divorce rate came 10, 15, 20, 30 years later. And interestingly, the divorce rate is slowing down significantly as people get into their 40s and they got married late 20s, early 30s instead. You seem to, get more experiences, you get to do more things. I love relationships. I think everyone should be in relationships where they want to be. But simply don't get married yet. It's just because we change so much. And what you're interested in, what your partner's interested in is that. And your generation doesn't know, you probably won't get married anyway demographically for until your late 20s. So you'll be fine. But relationships are a real part of your life. And it's no fun to do things by yourself. Let me expound the relationship a little bit further. Keep your friends. You were talking about romantic issues, I think. But you also have buddies, you also have friends, you have pals, people you hang out with. And your generation is so much better than my generation at keeping friendships going. And you keep friendships that serve the same folks as relationships. It's fun to go to Vegas with other people. Do not go to Vegas by yourself. That's just weird. It's just no fun. If you like it and you're by yourself, there's something wrong about you. Going to New York by yourself is fine for a day or two, but after a while, it's like, what do I do by myself, right? So hang out with your friends. Enjoy your friends. Keep in touch with your friends from college. Because all of you have different careers, but try to get together once a year and just do something crazy, all right? Have some fun. Go on an adventure. Go to a city you've never been to before. Go to Alaska together. Go to South America together. Go to Vegas. Go someplace. It will happen in your early 30s, late 20s when you start doing wedding stuff. Everyone gets back together on wedding years. You know what I'm talking about? But I would say that you're missing out on that 10-year period of time, or 8-year period of time between graduating from college and doing the wedding stuff. So hang out with your friends too. It's a good thing. Don't give up on your friends. I would tell you, keeping your friends from college is one of the most important things you can do. No matter where you go. You want to stay with them when you visit their cities. You want to say, let's go someplace together. Let's do something together. Let's go back to a UT football game and laugh at the freshmen. I mean, there's all sorts of things, right? So relationships with a broader speaker, absolutely. Marriage, the data is relatively clear. Wait. Not too long, though.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit different, so I'm not a student. I'm a hall coordinator. I supervise here. And my question to you guys, and thank you for being here this evening and doing this for us. My question is more on life, social life stuff after college. So you talk about going into business a lot and what that looks like and how you'll have people of different ages supervising you. And I want to point out to all of you that this is the last time that you'll be together all the time with a peer group of your same age. And so how do you adjust leaving a university such as this and
That's a good question. It's, I think, especially hard for men because we don't do that relational maintenance as well. I think, first of all, we'd say be aware of it, be mindful of it. As I talked about a little earlier, it won't happen naturally. You have to be proactive and deliberate in maintaining those relationships. Beyond Facebook, I should say. So men tend to need to perform activities, and so that's why things like going to a game or going bowling or actually doing something is a wonderful way to stay connected. Females can do a better job of just talking as a way to connect. So specific advice for guys, when you graduate and you feel like you're getting a bit socially isolated, maybe because of your location or your job, everyone's older than you, don't be bashful about asking guys out. If you know what I mean. Really be proactive with making sure you go to lunch, you go to a ball game, you go to a movie with men as a way to maintain those relationships.
you do have to work out a little bit because you know, right now, I'm sure on occasion you go to 6 feet till 2 a.m. and you don't have class until noon the next day, no big deal. Usually when you start working, you have to change some of your patterns of the way that you enjoy your friends and the kind of things that you do. But hopefully you'll have a little bit more disposable income with which to do those things, take an occasional trip, and so that other opportunities present themselves. One other thing, I think this talks to the importance of fit wherever you work. You're going to spend more time with your workmates at your job than you do with any friend, maybe even with a spouse if you're married. So don't minimize the importance of, do I like these people I'm considering going to work with? Because if you do like them, man, it's fun to go to work. You enjoy accomplishing things together and helping people, and they help you, and that's where you want to be.
I would say challenge yourself. These people know more than you know, so learn from them. I mean, who's in athletics, seriously? I have a nephew who's extraordinarily best decathlon guy in America today for some odd reason. And there's a genetic flaw, something happened because no one found. But when he was in high school, he was #1 in the country as a sophomore. And I said, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay motivated? I mean, you're the best already. You got 2 more years in high school. He says, decathlon's easy. You don't have to be great at anything. You just got to be above average. I said, no, really. You're really good at this. What makes the difference? He says, well, actually, I don't look at other high school kids. I look at the college kids' numbers. He's at college. University of Arkansas, surprisingly, has one of the best track programs in America. I never knew. How would you know this? All right? I asked him, he's NCAA champion twice in heptathlon. I said, how do you get motivated now? He says, I look at Olympic numbers. So you always want to compare yourself to somebody a little bit better than you. Does that make sense? We know in children, for example, if they play only with their age group, they can have, when you play with your peer group, you can say, I gotta be competitive because everyone's the way. Play with slightly better, you have to get better, don't you? So go to one level above and beyond what you think. That's one thing. Number 2, remember these people are grown-ups. Some of the people work with your parents' age. Everything you do, this is going to sound really paranoid, but remember this. You're going to run into these people at parties. They don't think it's cool you threw up in the cab. They really don't. All right? They get scared about that. So you're kind of on show in a different way than in college. That's been my experience, at least. You're dealing with your parents. You're dealing with people 30 years older than you, 20 years older than you. They have lives. And so you've got to understand they're going to be judging you for the different lens, if that makes sense, than you had in college. And that's probably the toughest challenge, is all of a sudden, you gotta be a grown-up all the time. And even how you go out for weekends, you see your boss, you don't want to make metaphors, you want to see your boss dressed in a way that make you feel uncomfortable at work Monday morning. You don't really worry about it in college, except running into Luke Winslow at a bar. But it's kind of like you're on a show. It's a different kind of show, and that's one of the challenges I think you run into is you're hanging with grown-ups. Then it's just a very different environment as a consequence.
This question is for Professor Daly, but at first you discouraged kind of like bragging about not going on vacation, like working really long hours, because you said more do something that your parents won't like, something illegal maybe. But
I never said illegal. I didn't say illegal.
But then later you said that you should also like try to be above the rest, like your daughter was at the White House. So how do you try to balance like still having time to be fun and stuff, but also doing a lot of work so that you can show you're kind of above the rest?
Don't sleep. My daughter's a great example because she was insecure. And she did something I never expected. She tried for an internship she knew she couldn't get. And she got it. Does that make any sense? By the way, she got it mostly through her network, which was interesting. She was the only student on her campus who got a White House internship the year she did. And the reason why is not that she had brilliant grades. She did. She was above average. But she made the ask. Basic rule in life, stop negotiating with yourself. And most of us spend too much time talking ourselves out of opportunities. Make the ask. And you want to ask for things that you don't think you could ever get. What's the worst thing to say? No. No is fine. If you never get a no, there's something wrong. And so you got to ask for those challenges. And you got to ask your parents for those crazy moments, right? If your parents say, oh, we want you to come home for the summer, you say, I actually rather be working in, pick another place, Vietnam, I'd rather be working in Australia, I'd rather be staying in Austin, helping small businesses get more successful, get my business knowledge. You gotta make the ask. And your parents say, that's stupid, why don't you just get a good job? You say, I'll learn more here, and you gotta make that argument with your parents, I guess my suggestion. So I want you to aspire to a higher level, but you gotta seek out those things that you don't think you can get, as opposed to things you sure you can. How many of you are amazed you got into UT? How many of you were amazed you got into UT? How many of you knew you weren't gonna get in? You got in. You got in. Had you really said, I can't get in, so why even apply? You wouldn't have applied. And so my notion is what? You go for that thing you know you can't get and see what happens. The worst that happens, what Luke says, you fail. But who cares? You at least made the attempt. You regret things you didn't do far more than you regret things you did do in life. That's been my experience. You don't want to be 50 years old and say, I wish I had done that. Because you can't roll back sometimes. So I go for those tough things and go for the extraordinary things. The worst you can say is no. The worst you can do is fail. That doesn't really matter that much. Apply for jobs you know you're not going to get. I mean, there are jobs you want to work at McKinsey. No one gets a job at McKinsey. Why not? Somebody does. And a lot of students at UT have been through McKinsey, by the way. Apply for Goldman Sachs. No one gets a job. A lot of people from UT. We have former faculty members working at Goldman Sachs, in fact, all right? Apply for White House. Do what you think you can't do. What worst happens, you can always fall back on a UT degree and work for Accenture. No. Sorry. Don't watch that. You know what I'm saying? You just gotta push yourself on it. And I think that's what you do. Push yourself for those, what I call crazy things, because you won't be able to live when you're 50 or 60. You can do them now. How did you do that?
I guess this is kind of like a follow-up, but at what moment did y'all act most spontaneously, and like how did it affect you?
Oh, they want to know. The video's up. Not going there. Sometimes take this one first.
I'd like a week to think about that one.
His wife is here.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my first year in grad school here, I one day went to the barber across the street over there in Guadalupe and got a mohawk. Not a slowhawk, but a mohawk. And it was pretty spontaneous and pretty stupid. It was very important for my identity at the time. Do something different and weird, and found that one. That's pretty spontaneous.
The rule is pictures or it didn't happen.
I gotta find some of those.
My favorite spontaneous story when I think about it is I'm dangerous near airports. I always want to go someplace else. So we were in Europe a number of years ago and we were supposed to go from Rome to Paris. And you go to DFW, you have all these American cities on the wall, right? You go to Europe, they have all these European cities. And I simply said to my partner, I said, I've never been to Warsaw, you want to go? He says, how do we get to Warsaw? I said, it's a flight, we can change our ticket. He says, that's crazy, we're getting out of our hotel room, we can sleep on the ground. We need a visa, I bet. We can get one, you can pay anyone to get a visa if you want to. I said, I'm sure we can get one. So I went to Warsaw. And I do that regularly. I believe spontaneity is important. I was in Brookings, Oregon once. Have you been to Brookings, Oregon? It's extraordinarily beautiful. And I was sitting in a little diner one morning. My wife was getting ready, and I was having breakfast. And you always look at these real estate magazines for some reason, right? Old guy comes over and says, "You planning to move here?" And I went, "I don't think so. I know, it's beautiful there." He says, "Don't move here." I said, "What's the deal?" He says, "We bought a vacation home here years ago, and I'm stuck coming here every year." So I guess what you want to do spontaneity-wise is keep exploring new things. I guess that's my theme for the night, isn't it, when you think about it? So spontaneities, go someplace you don't know. That was my most spontaneous moment, I think. There were others I can't tell you about, but that was...
You know, I have to think about it. I'm not a spontaneous guy. I'm a planner, and usually, you know, maybe to a fault, I plan things. But you know, go back to what I said earlier, that's okay, because I'm happy with that. I appreciate that. Well, I admire people that are spontaneous. It looks like a lot of fun. That's just not me, and I'm totally fine with that. I like to plan things out and make real methodical decisions, and it goes back to how you're wired and what makes you happy, and that's what you got to do.
So we have time for about one more question, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
I suppose going off of Professor Daly's lesson of not being afraid of no, what was y'all's biggest failure that taught you your most important life lesson?
Very good question, Kenny. I played football in college, and my junior year, my team was supposed to be really good, but we went 4-5, and I played terribly. And in the off-season, coach, I'd been the starting quarterback for a couple years, and coach brought in some new players, and I was going to either switch to wide receiver or be a backup and not play. And it was like a gut check moment for me, and kind of testing your fabric in some ways, not to get all like jock on you. I really became who I am in that couple months when I decided I was going to stay, wasn't going to transfer, was going to compete to win back the starting job. And I did, and the next year we went 9-1, and I started and had a great year. And now, whatever happens to me the rest of my life, whenever I fail, I feel like I have that as kind of this piece of bedrock that I can come back to. Like last couple years, I applied for this job that I thought I was going to get. I didn't get it, and I was hurt. But after having like a defining moment like that when I was y'all's age, I could bounce back from it much easier.
You can brag a little bit more about the football stuff.
I can?
Absolutely.
Oh man, all right, I threw for 6,670 yards. Broke every passing record.
You have the ring on though.
I've wedding ring. I won a national championship.
No big deal. No big deal.
No big deal. Yeah.
Almost like every record in the record book, something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary.
You didn't tell her how it turned out. 9-1, but that was it. I was like, you gotta, come on.
It turned out well. Yeah.
Remember, I said Scarce Nevada was probably the only PhD football player in business, right? Failure, my biggest failure was I got divorced many years ago. And it was a good divorce. I'm glad it happened. I think my ex-wife was even happier. We had 2 wonderful children, but looking back, I was one of those people who got married at the age of 21. And I'm still not sure why, neither of us are really sure why we got married. But it seemed like the right thing to do, and again, it's learning that you can come back from that, and you can form new relationships, and you're a different person, different parts of your life, and that's okay. And it's nice to be able to come back and say, I'm happily married to someone for the last 25 years, and it's been a wonderful relationship, but I don't think I would have met her if I'd stayed married to my previous wife. So a failure turns into something wonderful over a period of time.
Well, I probably already mentioned my biggest failure, and that's very similar to one you mentioned, John.
Maybe it's an age factor, who knows? Watch
I think most people that have been through some of these life experiences would tell you that no success in business is worth a failure in your personal life. And so you should take that very seriously. And you have to work at it. You have to work for your teacher degree. You work very hard at your job. You have to work at a relationship. And I think the advice about waiting to get married until you have a little more experience and you're done growing up a little bit is very good advice. Hopefully you will take that and not make some of the same mistakes that I did.
So with that, again, I wanted to say thank you to a couple of people. Thank you very much for DHFS for providing the food. Thank you all to everybody that's here. And a very, very, very special thanks to these 3 individuals for giving us quite a few amount of minutes of their time. Can you guys please help me? Very small gesture. Tomorrow, Delta Sigma Pi is hosting their faculty appreciation. Is it a brunch, I guess? It's like a brunch? Yeah, it's a brunch. And so it's awarded this day. Today's actually the 15th of April, but it says the 16th since it's tomorrow. And you 3 were absolutely on our list. And we'd love for you to come by and get some food tomorrow. But I have awards here. Just want to say thank you one more time for being here, guys. Really appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you guys.